You're watching Aurora 8, proud to be serving Aurora, Colorado, and all America City.
It was during a speech contest in high school that Rick Crandall first got the notion that he might like a career in radio. Instead of going to college, he was told a better path might be to get experience in the military. He did take that advice, enlisted, and worked for the Armed Forces Radio Service. After 6 years of service, he ETS, meaning he got out and worked a few years at the Air Force Academy, announcing games for the Falcons before eventually winding up at KOSI and then KEZW, where he spent the last 22 years as the morning show host and program director. But in all the things he's done, 2013 will prove to be an important year for Rick Crandall. Not just because he was named Colorado Broadcaster of the Year, I'm jealous there, but because of a special project he's been working on very hard over the last decade. A project that will create a special place of remembrance for our veterans, both for Aurora, the state of Colorado, and the nation. We will tell you about that project, and you'll learn more about the man behind it coming up next, right here on Dateline Aurora. Greetings and welcome to Dateline Aurora. I'm Adam Dempsey. Many of you may know him by his smooth, friendly voice on the morning show at KEZW, and maybe you've been to one of his many special events that he serves as host of such as the annual Veterans Day Recognition Luncheon right here in Aurora. Regardless of how you might know him, he's definitely become a fixture in our community, and a few people would disagree with the notion that he's also one of the most likable. I'm talking about, of course, KEZW radio morning show host and program director, Rick Crandall. Rick, welcome to the program.
It's good to be with you, my friend.
Smooth morning voice.
How about that?
Oh, boy.
It hurts you to say that.
I know it does. It just hurts me all the time. But it's great to find out. I've met you before that you are a veteran.
Yeah, 6 years in the Air Force.
Really?
There are a lot of guys, Marine and Army guys, say that's not like being in the service, but it was the Air Force.
It was the Air Force.
It was
the Chair
radio.
Force. Oh, I didn't mean to say that. But you've been hosting the Veterans Luncheon for some time.
Yeah. In fact, the Armed Forces Recognition Luncheon in April, which is a wonderful event here in Aurora, and the annual Veteran Salute in November, which the City of Aurora sponsors through the Aurora Center for Active Adults, which actually started in my morning show about 18 years ago now.
Really?
A little gag Mayor Paul Tower and I were doing, and it grew into this Veteran Salute. So, yeah.
So Aurora's been pretty responsive to veterans and veteran needs and making veterans feel welcome in the community here then, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of original Aurora, people who were born here and grew up here back in the 60s and 70s when Lowry was here and Fitzsimmons was so active, likely the people you live next to were veterans or were a military family, so everybody kind of had a little taste of it. I think as we've become bigger and we've become a little bit more of a mobile society, there's not quite as much direct connection to the military as there used to be, but still a community that's proud to support them.
But we have a lot of retirees here and a lot of men who, like yourself, didn't spend your entire career there, like me too, the same way. So they're all still here.
Yeah.
And that's where the memorial makes a lot of sense, right?
I'll tell you, this memorial from its beginning was a bit of a gypsy. It was originally going to be located out at the old Lowry. And because of circumstances out there with the redevelopment, it kind of kept getting shuffled around.
Yeah.
So got moved to Aurora. One location was going to be over at Alameda and Airport for a lot of years. We thought it was going to be there. Now it's moved up to this new location where it's actually built up on Telluride. But Aurora has always felt like this is where it should be.
And it's a complement to the memorial that's down in between the Capitol and the Denver City and County the building that sits there on Broadway in Lincoln.
That's right. The Veterans Memorial that's down there, the obelisk and with the emblems of military service down there, serves an incredible purpose for official ceremonies. If there's something at the state capitol related to veterans, it's a convenient place to go. For a lot of veterans, it's a little difficult to get there because where it is. There's not parking convenient.
There's
right?
no parking.
It ain't quiet. You're not going to have a prayer service down there
exactly.
anytime soon. So what this becomes is a more rural complementary setting to that, where families can go. We had a mom, we had groundbreaking on February 2nd. A mom came up to me and she said, "Thank you for giving me a place to leave my tears."
Yeah.
What people sense in this location in Aurora is that quiet place where they can go, see their loved one's name on that memorial, and at least in that setting feel like they've reconnected.
And that groundbreaking day for you had to be one big, we got here.
12 years.
Yeah, 12 years. We have a wonderful shot of you mugging like,
look at that.
I'm getting this
Look
done.
at that.
You know?
You see that big truck in the background there moving dirt, and that's what it was. It was like, wow. Because 12 years, there's ample time for you to think along the way, this is kicking my bottom right now. This is not going to happen. I had many of those nights where I went off to speak to a group of 8 people, and at the end of the night they gave me a check for $10 and said, good luck to you. I need to raise $700,000, and I'm like, oh, this is not going to happen. But it was something we couldn't give up on.
How many designs did you go through before settling on the current one that's being constructed now?
One of my favorite stories. So the design of the memorial, the glass panels, this memorial. So when this first all came up back in 2000, towards the end of the year, I went to the gentleman who was the head of the Wings Over the Rockies Air and Space Museum at the time, and I said, I need to find somebody who can design a memorial. You don't look that up in the yellow pages. And he gave me a card. He said, here's a kid that was just in here talking to me about some redesign work for us. I'm not sure we're going to use him, but I really like this kid. So I called him. His name's Christopher Kenton. I called him, answered the phone. Sounded like he was 12 years old. Yeah. This little voice. He said, hello. I'm like, oh. So I introduced myself, told him what I was trying to do, and he said, well, it's December. He said, I'm leaving to go to Kansas, go home for Christmas. When I get back, let's get together. So January comes, I get a call. He says, it's Christopher. He says, I've designed the memorial.
Whoa.
So, well, wait a minute. Now, I've had one 20-minute phone call with him. So, okay.
Do you know where we're going here?
So he said, let's get together tomorrow. So the next day we got together. I go there, and in walks this guy who looks like he's 12 years old. And I'm thinking, there is no way. And he opens his sketch pad, and design has not changed from that design.
Hasn't changed. Wow.
And I looked at him and I said, how did you know? And he said, well, what I didn't tell you was my father was in the service and my grandfather was in the service. And I felt like I knew what you were after.
Speaking of people being after, when you were in high school, you thought about radio.
I did. I went to Aurora Central. Dad was in the Air Force, retired.
Go Trojans.
Go Trojans. 1974 I graduated.
Yeah.
My wife and I had our first date at senior prom at the Beck Rec Center. That's where our prom was. 1974.
Were you just trying to find a date to go to the prom with? Is that the deal?
No, well.
And it worked out for the long term.
She tells me when I ask her, she says, well, another guy, I'm waiting to see if this other guy asks me. I said, So she calls me a couple days later and says, okay, I'll go with you. We've been married 38 years now.
So that worked out for her.
But it was at the Beck Rec Center, which is where the memorial's being built now. So that little plot of land out there has really been important to me. But my dad retired out of Lowry, so I went to Central, and I was involved in the speech department and in the theater department there. And in our senior year, they had introduced a new category in speech meets of radio broadcasting. I thought that was kind of fun. They give you some copy and said, okay, you've got 3 minutes to put together a newscast. So I did. I competed in the first meet, finished second. I thought, wow, that's pretty good. And I kept competing in it, and I really got bit with this is kind of cool.
As they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, here we are.
When it came to making the choice of going to college or going in the service first to further your career, that's a wrenching decision for a lot of people. What led you to the service? Somebody said go on and do it, but it's still your own internal compass said, yeah, maybe that's the way I ought to go.
It's 1974, and I'm in the hallways at Aurora Central. I could walk you right to the spot. and it was college career day, and there was college counselors from all over the state there. And down one of the hallways was a CU counselor, and I went over and talked to him, told him I wanted to be in radio, and he said, you know what I'd recommend to you? You ought to go into service, because in the same 4 years you'd be at CU, if you're in the service, you'll actually do radio every day. That will be your career. Up here at the campus, you might get on the campus radio station for an hour at night, middle of the night, right? But if it's really what you want to do, that might be a better choice for you. And my dad had been in the Air Force. I knew about it, so I wasn't concerned about that. So I ended up enlisting.
Is that you with the...
Yeah, look at that. Back then. In
thick hair too, dude.
Yeah, mustache sort of. 1976, and when you joined the military then, because it was right after Vietnam and not many people were enlisting, if you signed up for 6 years, they gave you a stripe right away.
Yeah.
So there I am, me in that one stripe in Guam. Reading Billboard magazine, and that's how it started.
And you were broadcasting in Guam.
Doing the morning show.
Doing the morning show. That's never gotten out of your blood either.
That's what I've always done.
See what the Air Force will do.
Yes, exactly.
How'd you like Guam? How did you like being in the Air Force and places like that? I know the service guys responded positively to hearing music from home. And news then.
Yeah, I loved every bit of it. I was there 15 months, and I truly loved every minute of being on Guam. And a lot of veterans I'll talk to will look at me like I'm crazy, but their experience was World War II when Guam was a whole different place than it was in '76 when I was there. And it was really, it was what I needed at that time of my life. It was a great experience to be that far away from home and have to be on my own and responsible for myself. My wife came with our brand new baby daughter. It would just really was a great place. And radio there was very much like Good Morning Vietnam. It was, I'd finish my show at 9, the guys over in the chow hall would hear I had just finished, they'd cook me up some breakfast. I'd get off the air, walk over to the dining hall and have some breakfast. It was pretty cool.
So were you like Robin Williams who said, good morning Vietnam? Did you say good morning Guam, right?
I've since become friends with Adrian Cronauer, who Robin plays in that movie. And it was pretty close. It wasn't all the way there, but it was pretty close.
When you got out of the Air Force, you come back to Aurora. You come back to the Denver area. A lot of radio people get on the path of going from a medium town to a bigger town to a major, because that's how you make the money there. But what brought you back home?
I've wondered that myself. I don't know. I think it was 1986, and I had been in the service 6 years, and then I stayed at the academy for a few years after I got out as a civilian in the athletic department down there. And I think at that point, between my dad's service and my own service in the civilian years, I had been on a military base about 35 years. And I thought, you know what, I just need to get away from this now. So we came back up here. And just on a whim, I applied for a part-time job at Cozy. Lee Stewart was a program director back then. A lot of Aurorans will remember that name from the station being here. In high school, I used to go over to Cozy Studios over there on Elmira by the old city park. They would let students come in from the high schools to do PSAs for the school plays. And I used to go in there and do the PSAs. So I came back up. Lee Stewart was still there. He interviewed me. I got a part-time job with him on Cozy, and KEZW is the sister station to Cozy. Bill Armstrong owned them both, and here I am.
I'm still doing the morning show like this guy here.
Like that guy right there.
I just could get up at 3 o'clock in the morning the way you do to get that show done. I applaud you, my friend.
No, it's still not normal. My wife gets mad at me Saturday. She'll say, all right, we're going to sleep in today. 6 o'clock, I'm up. And she's yelling at me. I thought we were sleeping in. Well, I just slept 3 hours longer than I normally do. I did sleep in.
But the station has been really supportive of you and the memorial that you're getting done.
I work in an incredibly supportive place. My boss, Amy Greisheimer, who's I knew her as a salesperson before she moved up and became general manager. She and I have been friends for a lot of years. She has just given me free rein to do what needed to be done. The owner of our station, our stations are owned by Entercom out of Philadelphia, or outside of Philadelphia, Bala Cynwyd, Pennsylvania, and David Field, who is our owner, has been incredibly supportive of what I've done. Here's always been my philosophy about what we do. I really believe, and when I've hired new people at KZW over the years, I honestly, to my soul, believe that there is an immense responsibility that comes with that gift of being behind that microphone. And shame on us if we don't in some degree pay back the community that tunes in and listens to us by supporting things that are important in the community.
Yeah.
When this memorial idea came up, you could sense immediately the listeners of the radio station thought, wow, that's a really important thing. So the station didn't hesitate to support me. So.
And you built a generation of veteran listeners too at the same time. Not just civilian listeners, but veterans too, connecting with the memorial and the wonderful way you do your show in the morning.
It's, when I walked in 22 years ago, I was 34. The average age of listener at KZW was 73. Twice my age. I didn't have anything in common with them. How am I going to build a relationship? I get a call from a gentleman named Irv Obermeyer, who was a submarine veteran of World War II, who was at Pearl Harbor when Pearl was attacked. 1991 was my first year at KZW. It was the 50th anniversary of Pearl Harbor. And Irv called me and said, hey, I've got about 6 or 7 Pearl Harbor survivors. How about if we come down? And I said, yeah, fine. So they came down. And that was it. When I sat there for an hour and listened to them and could see in their eyes as they were telling the stories that they were actually back there seeing it when they were telling me the story, I thought, this is my connection. This is, I've got to allow this to happen more often. And so that's really where the veteran connection started. And it's just continued from there.
But you also had a good time listening to veterans from World War II, from Korea, telling and sharing their stories, and being a military brat like I am too. We really listen with a different ear than it's just not an old war story. No, it's actually histories of people and their legacy and their journeys.
Yep. One of the things that I do, addition to the radio station and the memorial, during this spring semester, I teach a course up at Regis University called Stories from Wartime. Yeah. And it's a junior writing course. And for 12 weeks, we have veterans in from conflicts starting in Iraq and going back to World War II, come in and share their stories of war. It's rated every year by the students at Regis the most popular course on the campus at Regis University. It is the first elective course to fill every year. And these young people, over 12 weeks, they will write in their course reviews, this was a life-changing experience for me, because they don't maybe have that same connection in the military that you and I had. And to see these generations come in and talk about the commitment to service and your buddies getting killed around you, and them having then a better understanding of what shaped these people, it's really...
It has to be fascinating too to see the connection between a veteran from World War II maybe speaking with a veteran from Iraq, Afghanistan.
Absolutely.
You know, and finding something, they find something in common there together. Because some of them would tell you, we didn't have a real war, we had a real war, you know. But I'm sure you found some very interesting connections that they do.
There was a gentleman here in Aurora named Glenn Berry, who was a Bataan Death March survivor who passed away a few years ago now. I did the eulogy at his funeral, and one day I had Glenn in a room, and I had guys from Buckley who had just flown F-16s in Iraq, and I had a couple of Vietnam veterans in the room, and Glenn started telling his story of the Bataan Death March, and these other guys were spellbound listening to his story. And then I moved from him to the Vietnam guy, and they were telling their stories, and Glenn was spellbound, and you could see the mutual respect generation to generation of what they had sacrificed, each in their own way.
In your own opinion, is that something that's missing in having a more cohesive community? Because we had the draft and that kind of thing. We had intergenerational sharing, and maybe we don't have the cohesiveness now because we don't have that sharing among men of multi-generations.
Here's where I think the disconnect is, and I think we've done a better job of it with Iraq and Afghanistan than we had prior. Young people don't know their own family stories of service, right? Dads go and fight in wars and they come home, they don't want to talk about it with anybody. Why? Because they've seen things and done things that normal circumstances you would never see or do. It's survival. Right? And so you're required to do things that you're not proud of. You see things that are horrific. And the last thing you want to do is tell your kids that you were a part of that. And yet your kids are partly the way they are shaped by your experiences. And so I'm always telling veterans, you need to let them know.
Yeah.
They need to know your story because they are who they are a little bit by your experiences.
Yeah, because people think that they see the glamour in the big screen on war.
Oh, yeah.
And then when you really are there, I always told my sons, they train me to be a killer.
Yeah.
Period.
That's right.
That's what the Army does.
That's right.
Okay, to point assault weapons at people and pull the trigger and keep going.
Correct. That's correct.
And that's not nice stuff to tell people, but
Nope.
that's what it does.
But it's important they know that was part of your experience
Yeah.
because then all of a sudden it's like, well, now I get why Dad was so strict, or now I get why Dad had trouble sleeping at night, or now I get
the syndromes and that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
You started the memorial concept in 2001.
Yep.
And then my birthday rolls through, September 11th. Took the wind out of your sails. What happened
I'll
then?
tell you what.
Share that with us.
The month before, August of 2001, we had just received our 501c3. We were officially a nonprofit. We were getting ready to launch fundraising. We now had a rendering of what the memorial was going to look like. We had everything in place. Here we go. 9/11 happens, and I knew instantly this isn't the time for this. We've just gone a whole different direction. We packed everything up. Occasionally I would go out and speak about it, but mostly it was just packed up until 2005, February 2005.
Really? You kept it packed up for 4 years?
Because first comes 9/11 and dealing with that. Then comes our engagement in Afghanistan. Then comes our engagement in Iraq. And then comes American soldiers returning home killed in action.
Right.
And now I've got a new generation that's going to be included on this memorial we're building. And it was too soon to take families from, we just buried your son, now we're going to put him on this memorial. It needed a little bit more time. By 2005, it felt right. So we pulled it out. We recommitted the board, we relaunched everything, away we go, and then the recession hits. And then all of a sudden nobody's got any money to give me.
Yeah.
So it took a lot longer than we anticipated. Honestly, when I first started talking about 2001, I thought, big famous radio star like me, this take 3-4 months, we'll call this even, we'll raise the money, build the memorial. 12 years later.
And that speaks highly of patience. In a society that celebrates instant gratification, we got to have it now.
Yeah.
Many good things take time.
Yeah.
And you've taken the time to make sure this comes to fruition the way it's supposed to come to fruition. Can I say that word? Fruition. I can spell it better than I can say it. So you had a lot of people that helped you with anonymous contributions and that kind of thing too?
We had every 2 or 3 months, it seemed, along the way, when it seemed like this just was, you know what, let's just give it up. Let's just take the money we've raised, let's give it to the American Legion, let's just do something with it.
Yeah.
A story would come along, we would meet somebody, something would happen that would indicate to us, you got to keep going. You can't let this go. A mom would say, Debbie Anderson, her son Doc Anderson was killed in Iraq by a Taliban sniper while he was tending to a fallen Marine. He had told his mom before he went, if anything happens to me, bury me in Arlington. Mom, like all moms would do, not wanting to talk about that. Yeah. Well, so Doc's killed, and so Mom honors his request to be buried at Arlington. Mom doesn't have a gravesite here now to go to. Bad thing for a grieving mom to not have anywhere to go with that grief. Debbie Anderson says to me every time I see her, thanks for giving me a place to go. Because to be able to go to this glass wall out in this park and stand in front of her son's name and see her reflection in that glass in his name, to her, he's home.
Okay, you mentioned an aspect of the memorial itself. You're going to have names there of Colorado vets, men and women too.
Yes.
How did that get to be a part of the content? Was that something
it was always part of it?
Man came up with?
No, from the beginning, what was going to separate this from everything else was we were going to have the names of everybody killed in action since we became a state. So the Spanish-American War through today. That was always in the plan for the memorial.
Yeah.
Originally, we had planned that we were also going to include their hometowns until we started looking at military records, and in some cases they included hometowns, others it was counties, others it was nothing. We knew we didn't have any shot on hometowns, so we just went with names. All branches of service. But as we got into this thing, we came to discover, man, military record keeping is, woo!
Oh, yeah.
That's like an oxymoron right there for you. Military record keeping. Woo, you know.
But they can still find them down there on Page Avenue in
Oh,
St.
yeah.
Louis. Okay,
Well,
at the
so
Record
in
Center
St.
before
Louis,
the fire.
Before
you know,
the fire.
fire.
So 1974, they have the fire.
Yeah.
And 10 million military records were damaged or destroyed in that
sure
fire.
were.
And they were trying to convert the records from paper to microfiche. Because we didn't have computers quite yet in 74.
Not
So
quite.
they're trying to get them to microfiche, and
Yeah.
that's when the fire happens. So I called the Records Center when we very first started this project, and I said, I'd like a list of all the Coloradans killed in action. And the lady on the other end of the phone says, yeah, so would we. What do you mean, so would you? And so she told me about the fire, and she explained it all to me, and the fact that from pre-Korean War, there's no 100% certainty. So I was given a list by State Archives here of 5,600 names, and I was told, here's a list, it's not accurate. So over the
You had to
last
go down
12
and look
years,
at that
we
list.
have been county clerks' records, Pentagon records, old newspaper stories, books, and we now have a list that's grown from the 5,600 we originally received to just under 6,000.
Wow. I've got two things I got to do real quick. Number one is the memorial itself. You're bringing it in from Wyoming or something. You have this
this is
beautiful
sweet.
ritual that you're doing. You got to share how this thing is going to
I'll
roll.
tell you. All right, so the glass panels were made in Minnesota.
Yeah.
A company called Viracon, and the names are printed on the glass. Glass panels were actually run through a machine like a Xerox machine, and they
This
were
is
printed
what
on
they're
it,
going
right?
to really
So
run
those-
through like a Xerox
Yeah,
machine.
those glass
Okay.
panels. So the names will be on those panels. And so we're bringing those panels to Aurora from Minnesota on a flatbed truck.
Yeah.
As we got discussing it, a lot of those names that'll be on those panels are of men who were lost at sea, shot out of the air, are buried in American cemeteries overseas.
Right.
So when those panels hit the state line with their names on it, it's like we're actually bringing them home.
Oh, that's great.
So they're getting an escort. Once they hit the state line at Julesburg, those panels will be escorted by Colorado Patriot Guard and others all the way to the site.
All the way to the side. Oh, that is so
Isn't that
good.
cool?
That is so tremendous.
Yeah,
Oh man, we got to line the ways and get salutes
Yeah,
and all
yeah,
that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
That is really, really good.
Yeah.
So when's it going to be completed? So we're gonna
Dedication,
have this-
everybody mark your calendars. We got two events. Saturday, May 25th, there's going to be a concert on the Great Lawn, right on the west side of the Aurora Municipal Center. 101st Army Band's going to play. A Face Vocal Band from Boulder is going to sing. They're fabulous, and it's our tribute to the Gold Star families.
Right.
And then on Sunday, May 26th at 2 in the afternoon, we'll have the formal dedication.
And even if people can't get to that, even the rest of the year, they're invited to come out and see it.
All the time
They're
from there.
invited to bring their flowers, lay their
Please,
wreaths,
absolutely.
become involved there.
Yep.
I have one final thing.
Yeah.
Is that you, Colorado Broadcaster of
How
the Year?
about that, huh? Look
Oh,
at that.
yeah. It's not the Dinosaur Award either. It's the real one. The Dinosaur Award is something the Colorado Broadcasters Association has for
Yeah.
people who've been in broadcasting
A
for a long
long
time.
time, yeah.
So you got the real working award.
Isn't that something?
That had to be fabulous, man.
The staff kept it a secret from me. I didn't know until we were at the banquet that night, and they called out my name and they showed a video. And you know, for us in Colorado, it doesn't get any higher than that. That's and you can only win it once. And I was overwhelmed that night. It was really quite special.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
Never known the Colorado Broadcaster of the Year. It's about time. Hey, good luck.
Thanks.
We'll be there when the memorial opens to salute
Thanks.
you and the work and the gentlemen whose names are there. That's all the time we have for Dateline Aurora tonight. I'm Adam Dempsey. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again for our next Dateline Aurora.
You're watching Aurora 8, proud to be serving the All-America city of Aurora, Colorado.